What's up, bud? It's Rob. This is Apparel Success. And if you don't know who I am, I run a Canadian clothing company called K-Bud Apparel that's doing 6 figures in sales. And I've been a full-time entrepreneur for the past 3 years. So I help entrepreneurs like you get really good results. And what I want to talk to you about in this video here is the difference between an employee and an entrepreneur. And this video is going to shine a very bright light on the flaws of how most employees think. And by contrasting the differences in mindset between an employee and an entrepreneur, I think that it's really going to show you how to properly think to be as effective as humanly possible as an entrepreneur. So here it is. Apparel Success is sponsored by my buds over at Design Crowd. And if designs are something that you struggle with, then I really recommend that you give them a shot. You post a project on Design Crowd, amazing designers from all around the world are going to compete for your project. You choose the winner, then you get that design plus revisions. This is the best-selling design on my website. Got the design made through Design Crowd. If you're interested, head over to designcrowd.com/apparel to learn about the special offer that I have for you where you can save up to $100, or simply use the discount code APPAREL when you post a project on Design Crowd. All right, so one of the ways that employees and entrepreneurs are forced to think really differently is that employees trade their time for money and entrepreneurs create value for money. And what this leads to for a lot of employees is coasting. And the reason why it leads to coasting is because you're being paid to be physically present somewhere. You're not being incentivized necessarily to create the most amount of value possible. You're being paid to be in a place from, say, 9 to 5. And what this does naturally is it doesn't incentivize you to be as productive as humanly possible or, reach peak performance in your job. You're being paid to be somewhere. And this is really the difference between being paid for your time versus being paid for your results. So this might offend some people who are employees, but I'm just speaking from my own experience working the jobs that I've worked, and I've worked some horrible jobs in my day. I've been working since I was in grade 8. And by far the worst feeling for me about working for somebody is this feeling of being imprisoned. When I'm at work, if I'm working, say, a 12-hour shift, because when I was working 12-hour shifts. If I left the place of work, then they could potentially fire me, which meant that I wouldn't make any money and that I would just be screwed. And so literally I was imprisoned by that place to be there, because if I left, then, the boss would just chop me down and I'd be fired. And so you're literally giving your time away and you have to be somewhere. It's like being in a prison. Obviously, they don't treat you like you're in prison. Like, you're free to leave at any time that you want, and that's obviously how it should be. But at the end of the day, you're kind of a slave to the money that you're making. And it sounds kind of harsh to say that, but I'm speaking from somebody, who's been through it all and who's experienced all of that myself. And that by far is the worst feeling, and that's by far also the biggest reward of being an entrepreneur. A huge difference between being an employee and being an entrepreneur is that there's a tendency for employees to view mistakes as being a bad thing, because if you make a mistake in your job, you could potentially be fired for it, which means that you no longer have a source of income. But as an entrepreneur, mistakes are actually what make you succeed, because those are the things that you learn from the most. That's where you're gaining experience. And so there's a huge difference between viewing mistakes as a bad thing because I can potentially be fired if I make one, versus let's try as many things as possible, make as many mistakes as possible, because the more mistakes that I make, the more learning opportunities that is, and the more that I can grow from them. And this is really similar to another reason why employees and entrepreneurs are different, which is that employees are actually incentivized to pass responsibility and to put blame on other people. And once again, the reason for this is because if you take blame for something that went wrong, if you say, yeah, I'm responsible, I was the one who screwed up, I was the one who, did that thing, then you could potentially be fired for it and you could lose your job. So there's actually an incentive there to pass responsibility a lot of the times. I mean, there's a lot of people who have strong character who are also employees that wouldn't do that, but I'm just saying that the underlying incentive there is to pass responsibility. It's to not be the one who's making any mistakes and doing anything wrong. As an entrepreneur, if you pass your responsibility off to other people for basically all of the things that have gone wrong inside your business, there's basically 0% chance that you're going to be successful. Because the name of the game of an entrepreneur is literally taking all the responsibility onto yourself and saying that anything that goes right, anything that goes wrong inside of my business is entirely my fault. And you're actually incentivized to do that as an entrepreneur, because by doing that, that's how you're allowed to grow. That's what's actually going to allow you to change your behaviors and correct it so that you're on a course to success. Another absolutely massive difference is risk aversion. And this is also known as loss aversion bias. And this is a term inside of behavioral economics that basically talks about people's tendency to value keeping your money more than gaining that same amount of money. So it actually hurts more to lose $100 than gaining $100 pleases us. And there's no equivalent there. And the reason for that is because, if we lose everything, we could potentially die. But there's an infinite amount that you can gain. And so that's why there's that loss aversion bias. And as an employee, you're really going to be risk averse, generally speaking, because risks don't necessarily come with rewards inside of whatever company it is that you're working for. As an entrepreneur, risks are actually necessary. It's a necessary component to your success. Another way to put this is that employees don't get paid to take risks. Entrepreneurs do. And that's actually sort of written into the DNA of entrepreneurship. And that's really the big reason why most people don't ever try to become entrepreneurs, is that it feels too risky to them, and it is too risky. And as an entrepreneur, this loss aversion bias is more commonly overridden. So most people are just sort of focused on winning as an entrepreneur rather than trying not to lose. And that comes back to this loss aversion bias, because as an entrepreneur, you really need to be focused on where you're going and that direction, and just staying focused on growing and stacking rather than sort of, oh God, I hope I don't lose this, or I hope this doesn't work, and things like that. It's just a completely different mindset there that is really just sort of necessary for an employee and an entrepreneur, and they both think very differently about it. And the last big difference between being an entrepreneur and being an employee is that entrepreneurs are forced to cultivate a bias for action. And what a bias for action is it's where you act even if you're not sure what the outcome is going to be, simply for the secondary benefits that you're going to get out of it. And so, this is what that might look like. You start up a business even though you're not sure if it will ever work out for you, and you start up that business because maybe it'll create some new ideas that you get out of it. You'll meet some new people, you'll gain some new experiences, and that investment actually just tends to lead into new opportunities. I know that happened with me. When I started up my clothing brand, we literally did it purely for the experiences. And actually, by starting up that clothing brand and having it somewhat succeed, then I came on YouTube and I could talk about it. So I hadn't even formulated the idea for this YouTube channel until after I'd started up my clothing brand. But by starting up the clothing brand, it led to this. And now that I'm talking about this, it led to new opportunities where I met a mentor, and then that mentor helped me grow my clothing brand. And then my clothing brand getting bigger helps me share all that with you and give even more value back to you. And so there's really that bias for action where you just start to realize as an entrepreneur that the more you just take action, the more it tends to branch out into more opportunities that tend to feed right back into the results that you're able to get. This really wasn't meant to be a shot at employees. I realize that there are a lot of intrapreneurs out there, is the term for it, where if you're working inside of a company, some people tend to think this way. But just generally speaking, there really is a huge paradigm shift that needs to be made if you're an employee right now and you're trying to switch into being a full-time entrepreneur, or actually becoming a legitimate entrepreneur who's living off of their own business. And, I really hope that this video shined a light on the ways that being an entrepreneur is different, and the behaviors that you need to take on, the way that you need to think about it, just to even solidify it into you 1 or 2 more % than it was before, because I'm sure that a lot of you have heard things like this before, but I hope that, I've done a good enough job explaining it to you. And, that's why I'm here. I'll keep coming back, keep making these videos for you to really help you get that even better for you. So I really hope that you got a lot of value out of it. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And if you got a lot of value out of this video, please hit the like button for me. It really does help get these videos out there. And if you haven't already, check out my free clothing brand marketing masterclass. All you have to do to get access is go to apparelsuccess.com/masterclass, and you can watch the whole thing for free. And if you've made it to this point in the video, I want to tell you about the closed Facebook group that we have for Apparel Success. There's a link in the description. Follow that link, join us in the group, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.